President Obama is addressing the controversy over government surveillance programs, and critics are asking if he's going far enough.
Some members of Congress worry that the spy programs could turn into Big Brother and target ordinary Americans. Heather Sells has that story.
As a senator, Barack Obama called out the intelligence community, warning it was invading the privacy of law-abiding Americans. Now, as president, he's issuing recommendations on government surveillance after months of review. That includes taking away the National Security Agency's ability to store the phone records of millions of Americans and let Congress and the intelligence community decide who will keep them instead.
So I'm taking this very seriously because I think, as I've said before, this is a debate that needed to be had.
Aides say even after a major study, the president still grappled with his decision just hours before his speech. The revelations by NSA leaker Edward Snowden, especially about the government's collection of phone records, prompted the appointment of a group to specifically consider NSA abuses under the Patriot Act.
Our judgment about the government holding the data is that the primary danger of the 215 telephony metadata program is not if it is used only in the way in which its use is authorized, but that it leaves sitting out there a huge amount of information, personal information about Americans that could be abused in awful ways.
It now appears the government has been collecting and storing text messages as well. The London Guardian newspaper says Snowden's info shows that the NSA collects nearly 200 million text messages a day from around the globe. Despite such massive gathering of information on the communication of everyday people, the president is reportedly backing only modest changes to our government surveillance. But mere tweaks could spell disaster, say privacy advocates, who fear the long-term collection of data could one day prove too tempting for those seeking political dirt.
We've seen this movie before. We know how it ends. We know that eventually, if that much information remains in the hands of government for that long, it will eventually be abused. It will be manipulated for partisan and otherwise nefarious purposes, and we can't let that happen.
Heather Sells, CBN News.
Well, if people are wondering if Big Brother is here, he's here, and it's live and kicking, and they're in your cell phone. The joke among security circles is if the government wants to be on your computer, they're already there. Well, in other news, the Obamacare website is still facing serious security problems. John Jessup has that story from our news bureau in Washington. John?
Gordon, that's right. Internet security experts are warning the Obamacare website security is so bad they could expose a user's personal information.
It could be used potentially to gain information of financial data. It could be used for identity theft. It could be misused many different ways. This can be long-term, can be very damaging to an individual.
The experts say the problems have gotten worse in the last few months. The chairman of a U.S. commission promoting religious freedom says the United States should include the rights of religious minorities in its ongoing nuclear talks with Iran. Robert George says the U.S. is wrong not to bring up the situation of believers like imprisoned American pastor Saeed Abedini.
I think it's a bad mistake, a terrible diplomatic mistake, one that will result in no progress being made if we sweep religious freedom aside and imagine that that can be sacrificed in order to make progress on combating nuclear arms or terrorism or anything else.
And Oklahoma Republican Senator Tom Coburn, a strong opponent of government waste, is stepping down at the end of this Congress 2 years before his term ends. Coburn says he's been battling prostate cancer, but his decision is to honor his pledge not to serve more than 2 terms rather. Coburn recently testified before a House committee on wasteful spending.
We have 679 renewable energy programs from 23 different agencies costing $15 billion a year.
Coburn says Congress isn't doing its job by letting government waste get out of control.